Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's that time of year again where I, as a people, set aside my differences and answer your incredibly stupid questions for, well, I don't know why, but I do it for some reason. And this is no different. It's time to answer incredibly stupid questions from incredibly stupid people. For I am a loving and kind and benevolent God, the amazing atheist. Alright, my question. Why the hell have you deviated away from what would be expected of someone with the name The Amazing Atheist, and also the reason I initially subscribed to you, shitting all over religion without an ounce of remorse, and into the current psychotic nonsense and rants that aren't nearly as controversial or interesting? Well, first of all, ranting about religion is not controversial. It may be interesting, but it's not controversial. Every little 14-year-old boy that wants to rebel against his parents is telling them they don't believe in God anymore. You know, maybe it was controversial to rant about religion back when they would burn you at the stake for it, but these days it's pretty damn mainstream. Atheism is just another little special interest group. As for, why have I deviated so far away from my name, The Amazing Atheist? Well, you know, I created that name when I wanted to talk primarily about atheism, and I no longer want to talk primarily about atheism. What am I supposed to do? I already had the subscribers, I already had the account, I wasn't going to start from scratch just so I would have a suitable name. Doesn't matter. You know, everyone knows what The Amazing Atheist is about. The Amazing Atheist is about what the hell The Amazing Atheist wants to be about. The Amazing Atheist is about talking about The Amazing Atheist in the third person, creepily. So that's what I do. You know, I don't have to be beholden to a label, even if it's a label that I gave myself, because that's a label that I gave myself at a time when I was a completely different person than I am today. Am I still an atheist? Yes. If I stop being an atheist, then I probably will get a different account, because I would never have a moniker that's dishonest. But as I still am amazing, and I still am an atheist, and I still do make some videos about atheism, I will call myself The Amazing Atheist. And if you have a problem with that, well, you can complain some more, I guess. And I heard the American government is pushing to get everyone implanted with microchips for a variety of reasons, such as criminal rates going down and being able to track everyone. Do you see this as a sacrifice of human rights and freedom, or does the idea sound reasonable? The idea does not sound reasonable to me. You know, I've always lamented the notion that one day, you know, we'll no longer be able to set stories in our own time anymore. You know, there will come a day where you can no longer tell a story that takes place in the present, because there will be no action in the present, because everyone will just be so strictly monitored that if anyone ever does go crazy and kill some people, we're just going to, you know, press the electric shocker in their chip and they'll just die right on the spot. There won't be any need for the hero to confront the villain. We'll just kill him instantly. You know, and you know, when you can kill the villain that easily, then everyone becomes the villain. You know, it gets to the point where, you know, if something goes missing from a store, you know, they catalog, you know, who was in the store at that time and cross-reference the serial number of the missing item, and then they know instantly who stole it. And you know, and you can't get away with anything. You know, everyone is so myopic that they just look at, you know, they say stealing is wrong, therefore we should catch all thieves. But they don't remember that stealing is also fun. You know, there's a reason that people steal, lie, cheat, murder, and philander, and do all this depraved, crazy stuff. It's because that stuff is fun. That's what we like to do as human beings. You have to, sure, there should be a risk. You don't want people going crazy with it, but you don't want people never doing it either. It's healthy behavior to be a depraved maniac from time to time. You know, and if you catch everyone who commits every crime, then that's no fun. We're going to live in a totally boring world in the future. You know, if technology progresses at this rate, we're just going to live in such a bland, lifeless, pointless culture, and everyone is just going to feel so castrated and worthless, and no one's going to know why. Everyone's just going to sit around wondering if existence has always been so bland, and none of them will ever know the truth. If you could come up with a movie concept, what sort of movie would you make? Keep in mind that this is hypothetical and the movie doesn't have to do well. You have a practically unlimited budget, so any actors, actresses, and franchises could be used. You could also remake a film. Crossover films are also acceptable options. Well, they may be acceptable options to you, but they're not acceptable options to me. I don't think we need another Alien versus Predator, or Alien versus King Kong, or Predator versus the Three Stooges. I mean, it's just out of hand. The movie I want to make is called Whiskey and Guns. And it's about just that. It's a Western. It's about a guy, and he's not some famous actor. I would hire some completely unknown guy. In fact, I wouldn't even hire an actor because actors are too prissy. I'd go to a construction site and find the toughest, meanest looking guy I could. I'd cast him in the movie. I'd put a gun in his hands, and I'd walk him through the desert, get him all blistered from the sun. Then he'd ride into town, drink whiskey, kill people, and that would be the movie. The credits roll, and it would say, written and directed by TJ. And you'd be like, hell yeah, that's the best damn movie I've ever seen. And, you know, the floors would be slicked with bodily juices excreted from the happiness of the audience at the awe-inspiring spectacle they had just beheld. So that would be my movie. Do you think Steve Irwin had it coming? Hell yes. I am so glad. I was so happy the day that guy died. I was clapping. I was laughing. You could not stop me from laughing on that day. Because here's the funny thing. He wasn't killed by a crocodile, which we all expected. He wasn't killed by some lethal snake or some deadly animal. Because, you know, he was an animal molester. He would go up to these animals and just mess with them, you know. He'd be like, oh, I'm going to stick my hand up this croc's ass. Oh! And then the crocodile would be like, what the ah! And we'd all hope that the crocodile would just bite his head off, and it never happened. And then finally it was a stingray, a docile little stingray that tourists swim with. Tourists swim with stingrays. You can go to Australia and actually pay to go underwater and dive and pet the stingrays. You can pet them, and sometimes they sting you, but usually it's like, ow, that really hurt, fucking stingray. It's called a stingray, dumbass. Sure. But almost never are those stings fatal. They're not even usually severe injuries. They're not even usually something that you would even remember by the time you got home and you were telling your family about your trip. You wouldn't even remember to tell them that you got stung by a stingray until maybe 3 or 4 days later. Oh yeah, the stingray, it stung me, ha ha ha. And you laugh. But Steve Irwin, who molested crocodiles and who you know, was taking juggling poisonous snakes, like, oh, these are the most poisonous snakes in the world, they are. He got killed by a stingray. The stingray is like, fuck you, ugh, dead. And he deserved it. Do you agree that arguments achieve nothing other than boasting intellectual superiority over another individual? Do you agree that 99% of the time you will not change the opposing person's opinion on said subject due to social predispositions and general pride? I'll tell you what, I do believe that. In fact, I would not say 99% of the time you have no chance of changing their mind. I would say 100% of the time you have no chance of changing their mind. Because even if you do change someone's mind, they don't admit it on the spot. I mean, people have changed my minds in arguments, but I don't admit it to them there and then. I pretend to continue to believe what I was espousing in the argument, and then later on, I act as though I came to a new conclusion on my own. That's how human beings do it. We're too egotistical to admit that someone changed our mind. Now, maybe there are people out there who are humble and who will, you know, admit, oh, yes, that's a good point. I will have to reconsider this matter, but that's not me, and that's not you, and you know it. Let's see. I am an atheist like yourself, but I have been in an argument with my girlfriend for quite some time about if the basis of religion is good. I say that all religions, Christianity, Buddhism, and all other ones, are really just about control at their core, and no matter how you look at it, it's bad. My girlfriend says that the basis is still good, but has gotten out of control over the last few hundred years by fanatics that have twisted the true meaning of religion. What do you think? I think that you need to give your girlfriend a history book. To think that religion was this great thing up until a few hundred years ago when it was twisted by some fundy maniacs, that's utter nonsense. Religion has become less harmful over time, and look how harmful it still is. You want to talk about fundamentalists, then look at the Dark Ages, look at the Spanish Inquisition, the Crusades, the the Salem witch trials. That is the face of religion. I mean, Islam was spread at the tip of a sword. Christianity was spread at the tip of a sword. Buddhism, you could claim, is a little better, but it still makes people content to live lives of abject poverty. I mean, the primary tenet of Buddhism is that life is suffering, and that suffering stems from attachment, and therefore you should not be attached to anything around you, and that includes your friends and family. Buddhists will say that is a simplistic reading of their text, a simplistic understanding of what they believe, but at the core, that is what they believe. They believe that life is suffering, that suffering stems from attachment, and that attachment to all worldly things is, a detriment to achieving nirvana or whatever state of higher consciousness that you want to attain. There's every religion really is likes to debase the human spirit. When it comes to conventional Christianity, there's this huge hatred for anything sexual. That's why the Catholic Church told people that only missionary sex for the express purpose of procreation is appropriate. You shouldn't have sex for pleasure. You certainly shouldn't have oral sex or anal sex or anything like that. Islam, the most Islamic countries will still send homosexual men to prison, or if not, the gallows, just for, wanting to have sex with someone of the same gender. So religion is, it is harmful, and it has always been harmful. And if you look at the texts, the Bible, the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita, the original teachings of the Buddha and other Buddhist leaders, they're all depraved. They're all sick. Your girlfriend doesn't know what she's talking about historically if she's saying that she thinks the teachings were twisted, because no, they weren't. The teachings had actually been softened for modern times. They used to be a lot more barbarous. At what age did you consider yourself an atheist, and why? I first called myself an atheist at the age of 9. And actually I didn't even know the word. I was driving in the car with my mother, and I looked at her and I asked her, what is the name of people who don't believe in God? And she said, those people are called atheists. And I said, well, I'm an atheist. And she started crying and saying she failed as a parent. And I was like, okay. It was really disappointing for me, because I actually thought that I would be rewarded, oh, you're so smart, you saw through the bullshit. But no, that was not the case. What, from your point of view, is a movie that needs to be made and hasn't yet? I really wanted to see the film adaptation of A Confederacy of Dunces. They were talking about Will Ferrell to star in that, and I think that would have been a tragedy. But if they got a decent actor in there playing the role of Ignatius, then I think it could be a really good movie, and I really want to see that. Although maybe I'm too eager to see great works of fiction ruined by making them into big Hollywood movies. But on the other hand, they're done well enough of the time that I think I trust that Hollywood could get it right, even if I don't trust that it will. Do you believe movies have a profound influence on our culture, or are they more a reflection of it? Well, not just movies, but all art has been a reflection of the culture. You can't... sometimes art does shape the world, but more often it's the other way around. The job of most artists is to hold a mirror up to society so that society can see its failings. That's why a lot of times great art doesn't survive more than a few generations. There were a lot of artists that were popular at one time that we don't remember the names of, and then there were a lot of artists who were nobodies in their own times that we do remember the names of, like Van Gogh, for instance. The reason for this is because maybe the struggle that Van Gogh was going through in his time wasn't really appreciated. It wasn't really in the zeitgeist yet, but now it is. Now it's out there, and now we understand it. Now we can look at his paintings and say, yeah, I understand that guy's mindset. But maybe at the time it was a little bit less common. At what age did... Oh, I'm sorry, I read that one. What, in your opinion, was the most important movie ever made? If you're going to talk about most important and not necessarily best, I don't really know what the most important movie is. I'm not sure that I look at film in that way. I don't really look at something and say, oh well, you know, that sure it was good, but is it important? You know, I don't really think of things in those terms, because what is importance to me? I don't really understand the idea. I mean, I understand it on a, you know, intellectual level, but on a visceral level, I don't really see how something is important unless it's important to me. The only thing I can really understand is my own personal idea of what is important and what is not important. And the most important movie to me are the films that I love the most. So that would be things like Unforgiven and Seven Samurai, because those movies have informed my life. You know, I don't just watch the movies and like, oh, I'm entertained by this on a blasé level, like, oh yeah, okay, well, Clint Eastwood shot that guy and that's good, you know, that entertained me. I'm looking at it like, what does this movie say about humanity? What does it say about people I've known in my life? What is it saying about me? How I react to this movie says something about who I am as a person, because this is a meditation on violence and the cycle of violence and the repercussions that violence has, that it reverberates on the human psyche. You know, and the Seven Samurai is actually similar in theme and tone. So, you know, those movies have been important to me because they spoke to something in me that wanted to understand a little bit more about the cycle of violence, I suppose. So to me, those are important. But I don't know, maybe you would watch them and you'd be like, I don't really see what the big deal is. But so, you know, if you want me to apply a movie that's important to an entire culture, I really couldn't do that. Because I don't think that we're homogenous enough for that to really work, at least not yet. Don't you think when you talk about a person as a social construction or a confluence of forces or as being fragmented or marginalized, what you do is open up a whole new world of excuses? Don't you think we should never write ourselves off or see each other as a victim of various forces? Well, the problem with that is, what if we are? What if we are just a confluence of social forces? You know, there are, you know, you might just be another peg in the social hierarchy. You might just be a social construct, a necessary placeholder for a collection of ideas. That might be what being human is. You know, we can't say that that's not what we are, and if it is, then it would be foolish to avoid it just because it would be an uncomfortable truth. But we should ask ourselves, is that the truth? Is that all we are? If we're more than that, then sure, it would be dangerous to simplify us in that way. But if that's what we are, then it would be dangerous to overcomplicate ourselves and to pat ourselves in the back and say, oh, we're more than that, when we're really not. I think we have to be honest. You know, we always have to look for truth and ignore consequence. That's my personal opinion anyway. If you could punch any Disney princess in the face, who would you punch and why? I would punch Princess Jasmine, and not because I dislike her as a character, because actually she was one of the more likable Disney princesses, but there would be something so satisfying about it, just because she's so women's lib and all that, that it would just be nice to be put in that domestic abuse role with her. It would kind of appeal to that caveman inside me. And, you know, when I'm punching someone, I want to appeal to the most primitive part of my brain. So, you know, when she's all like, I will marry who I want, I just want to punch her and be like, go get me a sandwich. Because that'd be funny. And, you know, somewhat sexually stimulating for some reason. Anyway, assuming that you are more insightful than your videos would have one believe, you must know by now. Actually, it says you must know by no, but I guess it means you must know by now that your videos cater to the stupid and the would-be intellectuals. Here's my question. How does this situation make you feel? Respond honestly. None of this only a small number bullshit. And this is written by someone named True Christian. So, obviously, there is a bias there. Do I appeal to stupid people? Sure, I can appeal to stupid people. I can appeal to intelligent people. I can appeal to any number of people because I'm not solely creating content for super geniuses out there to sit in, darkened rooms and contemplate, over a bottle of brandy and, the writings of Goethe or something. It doesn't work that way. I'm here to entertain, and I am an intelligent person. I don't know if I would go so far as to call myself an intellectual, but I am an intelligent human being, so sometimes I create content that is specifically for intelligent human beings, but more often than not, I try to create something that everyone can enjoy, as long as they have my particular sense of humor. And if you don't have my sense of humor, then you're probably not going to enjoy it. And if you don't have my outlook, then you're probably not going to enjoy my opinion videos where I espouse my ideas out there. But what can I do about that? How can I be an effective serial killer? Well, there's a few ways. First of all, don't get locked into a pattern. There's too many of these killers, they get caught because they're able to build a profile based on the victims that they choose. If you only kill 43-year-old black women, then eventually you're going to get caught. So you got to have a wide spectrum of victims. One day you kill a 16-year-old girl, the next day you kill a 43-year-old man, the next day you kill a 72-year-old woman, the next day you kill, a 54-year-old Puerto Rican guy named Earl. You got to vary it. You got to kill at different ages, different genders, different races, different income brackets, different professions. You cannot restrict yourself. Another thing is, don't ever leave a taunting letter to the police. Don't ever be like, I am the Alpha and the Omega, and this city will bow before. That's asking to get caught, especially in this day and age with DNA testing and all kinds of stuff like that. The best way to not get caught is to not even let them know a serial killer's on the loose. Don't form a pattern. Don't let any of your deaths look like anything but accidents. That's how you get away with it. It's not how you get the big headlines. If you're looking for some celebrity status, then by all means, write the notes, kill a specific type of victim, and do all that stuff. But if you're looking to actually get away with it for a long period of time, then, don't let them know that you're out there doing what you do. Would you rather be able to fight and kill masterfully with yo-yos or with frisbees, and why? Well, you got to go with the yo-yo. A frisbee, like let's say 1,000 ninjas surround me and they all have katanas and they're all trying to kill me. If I'm sitting there killing them with frisbees, I'm going to run out of frisbees after a while. If I have a yo-yo, I can still use that yo-yo. It's reusable. It comes right back. I kill a man with it, it jumps back into my hand. That's useful. A frisbee, I kill a man with it, and it's gone. And I gotta go get it. My enemy's not gonna give me time to go retrieve my frisbee. It's like, excuse me, can you guys please stop attacking? I left my weapon over there. It doesn't work. Are your old style videos going to return? The ones in which you cursed a lot and owned others? I understand that 2 videos of that sort almost got you banned, but you've made hundreds of them without question earlier. Well, earlier the rules weren't quite so strict. YouTube has started enforcing rules much, stricter than they did in the past. But those videos are going to return when I, get my site Free Speech Vids up. When freespeechvids.com is up, you will see the return of those kind of videos. And it will be a glorious return. In fact, you will see me doing videos that I never could have done on YouTube, even in the heyday of YouTube. So, look forward to that. TJ, what are your top 3 favorite dystopian films? Well, first I got to go with Idiocracy. I know it's a comedy, but actually I view it as a horror movie because it seems like it's impending. That really does seem like the direction we're taking at times. The only difference is that I don't think it's going to be quite that brand of stupidity. I don't think it's going to be the monster truck brand of stupidity. I think it's going to be a bureaucratic, spineless sort of Democrat stupidity. Like, we're going to be a future of boring Barack Obamas that just kind of like, well, what we need to do is we have to make this work for the future and all that nonsense. And then everyone's just going to talk like that, and no one is ever going to say anything the least bit controversial or frightening, and it's just going to be a boring, bland future for all. Another good dystopian film, even though it doesn't really take place in the future, is the first two Terminator movies, Terminator 1 and 2, both good, both take place. They take place in the present, but they involve elements of a dystopian future. And the setting, the sets that they had in the two James Cameron films where they show the future, those big piles of skulls and those melted playgrounds and stuff, those were so much cooler than the set pieces that they had in Terminator Salvation. Where was that stuff? That's the future we wanted to see in Terminator Salvation, and we didn't see it. Where were the piles of skulls? Where was the eternal blackness? That's the fun stuff. And I guess I'm gonna get some shit for going with such a cliche choice, but I really like the original Matrix's future. It's fun, and you have this resistance element and a world controlled by machines, and that's always interesting. It was just visually very stunning. And I'll give a special shout out to what I consider the worst dystopian film in Equilibrium, starring Christian Bale and Taye Diggs. That movie was garbage. Alright, lay out your prediction for the future of the world. What do you think will happen? I've already kind of gotten into this in previous questions, but I think the most likely thing is that everything is just going to become so safe, so sterile, so boring. I think that the government is going to control every aspect of your life, and the government will just be a complete puppet for corporations. So basically, you're going to just be this drone that exists to, buy useless stuff and never have any fun. Basically like now, but worse. But that probably won't be the actual future, because anytime you ask someone to predict the future, whether you ask them to predict it in the 50s or the 60s or the 70s or the 80s or the 90s, they always predict the future that's kind of like their own time, but just more extreme. Like if you watch 80s movies where there's a future, it's always like there's still like punk rock everywhere and like people with crazy hair, but it's just like super crazy, like Mad Max and stuff. And if you look in the 70s, their future is always like super violent, and it's like Clint Eastwood on crack. And if you look at future movies were made during the 60s, everything is like super peace and groovy, like the original Star Trek and stuff. So, everyone just, when people just look at the problems or their own culture, and then they just intensify it and say that's the future. It's just like now, only worse with robots. So, maybe not. Probably won't be anything like my prediction. Most are unlearned about horoscopes, and some are just plain skeptical, and that's a good thing. They are, because we should not believe everything that is presented to us, even science. I don't expect people to believe in astrology because they know so little about the true nature of it, but I do expect you to have looked into the subject carefully before saying anything about it. Astrology is stupid. Okay, I'm going to say that flat out, and I'll tell you a few reasons why. The first reason is that the planets and the stars are no longer have the same spatial relationship to the Earth that they did at the time that astrology was popularized. Not only that, but we didn't know about all the planets at that time. And not only that, we didn't really know what stars were at the time. And not only that, but they're just flat out inaccurate. There's a great video on YouTube where James Randi, the amazing Randi, is teaching this class, and he hands out these astrology reports to all these kids, all these college kids, and they all read it, and he asks them to rank it, how accurate they feel it was, and all of them said, "Oh yeah, this is so accurate, this is so me, this is me right here." But he told them like a special astrologer, filled out this report for each of them, based on their birthday and stuff. And they thought it was so accurate. And then they told them, pass it back to the person behind you, and the person in the back passed it all the way to the front. And they'd all gotten the same paper. Every last one of them had gotten the same paper, just full of vagaries and generalities, and they all thought, "Oh, this is me. Oh, I read this paper and I just see myself." No, you don't. Because everyone else got the same damn paper. It turns out you're just easily led. astray. So I don't believe in horoscopes or astrology. And, you know, I've had my sister, who's really into New Age stuff, has done astrology readings on me. And, you know, if you ignore all the misses, it seems compelling. Like, she'll say, like, you're a loner. I'm like, you know I'm a loner. Yeah, but the stars say you're a loner. Are you sure it's not you and you're just ascribing it to the stars? And then she'll always, you know, and then there'll be stuff that's, like, totally off base, like, you know, deep down inside, you want to kiss a kitten. Like, no, move along. Given your obvious atheistic views, have you ever contemplated moving to another state or country which would be more accepting of those views? What in watching my videos makes you think I give a fuck about acceptance? I don't care about being accepted. I'm accepted by my friends and my family, and that's all I need. If some assholes in my state or my country or my planet choose not to accept me, it's no sweat off my balls. It really isn't. I don't care. In fact, I would rather be an outcast. I would rather be the weird guy. You know, if fitting in means liking Britney Spears and watching CSI Miami, then no thanks. I'll be the weirdo. Can you prove the existence of others? Well, I can prove the existence of others as much as I can prove the existence of anything. You know, I know where you're going with that. You know, it's basically the old Descartes thing about I think, therefore I am, and you can only really prove the existence of yourself, and not even, you know, as a body and all this stuff that we perceive, but just as consciousness, because if there was no consciousness, then how could you perceive yourself? You know, there must be something going on if you're able to perceive events, and, you know, some people even try to discredit that, but I've never heard their rationale, so whatever. But, you know, you could just be a brain in a vat somewhere. I personally don't think so, because it just seems more likely that there actually is something here when I pick up this can. It seems a lot more likely to me that there actually is that can than it's being generated by my own mind or by an outside source that I don't really know about. It seems to me like things probably are pretty much as they seem. But maybe not, I don't know. But, you know, I can't prove that other people exist, but no one can really prove that, because you could always just say, well, what if it's an illusion? What if it's an illusion? It may be, but I don't think it is. I have no compelling reason to think so anyway. What do you think about sin and original sin and all that fun stuff? You know, I'm surprised by the number of Christians who, when I tell them that original sin is supposed to be sex, they seem very put off by that. Like, no, that was literally about a serpent feeding an apple to a lady, and it was filled with bad knowledge that God didn't want them to have. You know, it's full of sexual allegory. A serpent gives her fruit. You know, it's called carnal knowledge for a reason. Carnal knowledge. The original sin is sex. You know, that was when they realized their nakedness. And, you know, it's the beginning of religion's war against eroticism, you know. The repression of sexual urges, you know, what you want to do with your penis is unnatural, therefore beg for God's forgiveness. That's all that sin means, or original sin anyway. Do you ever worry that if there really is a heaven, you will not get in? I would have to be the biggest pussy in the world to actually sit around worrying about that. Never has that thought crossed my mind. I have worried about hell from time to time. I've been like, well, what if there really is a hell, and I go there and I burn for all time? But I've never been like, well, what if there really is a heaven and I don't get in because I said naughty things about Jesus? Doesn't bother me. I don't need an eternal bliss. I'm already resigned to the fact that I'm not going to get one, so I don't expect one, and I wouldn't be sad if I missed out. But, you know, if you know, that's the power of hell, though, that it can even scare someone who absolutely just does not believe in it. You know, But then again, I've always been kind of overactive in the imagination. I was always the kid who was afraid of the boogeyman and, monsters under the bed, monsters in the closet, aliens coming to abduct me, all that crazy nonsense. That was me. I was a bundle of nerves about that stuff, and I never really believed in any of it. But, it's like Mark Twain said, and I'm paraphrasing here, I don't believe in ghosts, but they still scare me. So yeah. How would you rate Slipknot's All Hope Is Gone in contrast with other albums they've made in the past? Would you say that they have sold out, as so many people tell me on a regular basis? Secondly, what is your favorite Slipknot song title? Well, I don't have a favorite Slipknot song title, but I will tell you what I think about Slipknot selling out. Don't bother listening to those people, because any band that has been around for a while, you're going to hear a ton of people claim that they sold out. You'll hear it about Metallica. You'll hear it about Iron Maiden. You'll hear it about Judas Priest. You'll hear it about AC/DC. Anyone who's been around for more than 10 years or so, you're going to hear people talking constantly about what sellouts they are and how their older albums used to be so much better. Just ignore that shit and move along. If you have an artist out there who is still producing songs that speak to you and who change your life, then don't listen to what other people think about it. A lot of people tell me that, Manson is sold out and he's not any good anymore. But the new album, I like it. I listen to it. It touches me. It speaks to me. I think it's brilliant, and that's all that matters. If you like something, don't let other people convince you not to. What was it like the first time you had sex? Well, the first time I had sex in this jungle gym, but it wasn't called a jungle gym. It was called like a jungle frank or some nonsense, because the joke was like, they're all called gyms, so we decided to be different and call it Frank instead. And I essentially lost my virginity to, the nastiest skank in history. I'm surprised that I didn't get an STD on the spot. So, that wasn't too good. And then the first time I had actual sex that I would consider not to be just horrible in every way was when I had sex with my first girlfriend, Cherie, for the first time. And I did that in Scotty's bed. I don't remember why I did that in Scotty's bed, but we did it in Scotty's bed. And I think it's because it was closer to the TV that we were watching, when we started getting frisky and stuff. And my dog Hercules, who is obviously no longer among the living, was barking at us the whole time, like, rah, 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 rah. So that was kind of interesting. And we had sex for a long time, I would say 45 minutes or so. And it wasn't because I'm so awesome and I have such incredible stamina or anything. It's just because I was so nervous that I couldn't ejaculate or reach any sort of climax. So yeah, not a very interesting story. What are your thoughts on genetic engineering and stem cell research? Many people believe that humanity should stop playing God and forget about using either or of these scientific methods, but others believe that these fields could bring about more progress in improving humanity. What are your thoughts on these two controversial fields? Well, stem cell research has already provided us with a cure for most forms of blindness. I don't see how you can argue that that's a bad thing. As for genetic engineering, I think there's a lot of weird fears out there, like we're going to create a race of super mutants or something. My own Senator, Mary Landrieu, the idiotic bitch that she is, actually co-sponsored a bill that would restrict the creation of mermaids and centaurs and weird half-human, half-animal creatures. And I was so ashamed. I'm just so ashamed of this state in general. My idiot Governor Bobby Jindal, my idiot Senator Mary Landrieu. It's just incredible stupidity in this state. Who would star as Elle and Kira in a live-action Death Note blockbuster if you were the director? I would say that I'd have to cast Rupert Grint of Harry Potter as the guy who played Ron Weasley as Elle, simply because he just looks the part. I mean, he has those same bags under his eyes. I mean, obviously, we'd have to dye his hair a different color, but that's fine. As for Kira, that's a little bit more difficult. I think you'd have to open auditions for that and try to find someone new, some kind of fresh, new talent for that one, because I can't think of any actor offhand that could really pull that role off in my mind, at least no one that springs immediately to mind. How did you manage to become such a massive, sellout, whiny-ass bitch boy? Hard work, dedication, and Wheaties. Eat your Wheaties. You have said in an oh, sorry, I skipped one. Why did you drop out of high school? I dropped out of high school because high school was filled with absolute pricks and douchebags who I wanted nothing to do with and who wanted nothing to do with me. Every day I would walk the halls and pretend I was a vampire because that's how out of place I felt. I felt like I wanted to eat alive every single person in that school. I wanted, I understand perfectly the motivation of those two little idiots at Columbine. I never would have done something like that, but I understand. I understand the emotional reasons for what they did, and it was just being subjected on a regular basis to that level of ignorance, that level of man's inhumanity to man. I felt half the time like I was in a, I felt like I was surrounded by aspiring Nazis. Like everyone there, just if you just peeled back the veneer of civility, you would find the most horrible beasts. Just listening to all these stories about, I listen to girls talk about how, their boyfriends, like, over the weekend, like, tortured a rabbit to death or some shit. Like, yeah, then they threw the rabbit on the ceiling and friggin' it was, like, limping around and then they crushed it with a rock. And, like, why? What are these... I don't understand this sort of behavior. What is with the insane cruelty and barbarism and abuse? And, that was the mentality I was trying to escape. I didn't want to be around that anymore. Little joke's on me, because the real world's exactly the same. This is just high school, but the veneer has gotten a little thicker. People pretend a little better, that's all. It's the same assholes I went to high school with. You've said in an interview that being an atheist doesn't really make you feel happy or excited because you believe that once you die there is no afterlife of any kind. However you act, rather it be an acting or a true feeling, that the only true answer is not to believe in God in any way, even if they support something such as evolution. How would you justify this besides saying, I know I'm right because no one really knows? No one really knows, therefore I don't believe in God. I don't claim to know that there is no God, but I can say comfortably that there is no God, and the reason why is the same reason that you can say comfortably that there is no Santa Claus, there are no fairies, lurking in your backyard, there are no, there is no Hogwarts if you go through, the Hogwarts Express or something like that. There's no vampires, there's no leprechauns, there's no wizards, there's no any of that stuff. And the reason that you don't believe in that stuff is because you've never seen any evidence for it. A lot of Christians say evidence of absence isn't evidence of absence. Absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence. But yes, it is. If you don't have any evidence for something, then there's no compelling reason to believe in it. If you're just going to tell me, there's a giant letter M in the sky, but it's invisible and it cannot be confirmed in any way, shape, or form, then I'm not liable to believe that there is a giant letter M in the sky. It just doesn't make any sense for me to believe so. So I dismiss God on that basis. Let's see some evidence. Let's see the slightest bit of evidence. After all this time, you think we would have found something. We haven't. Would you rather make love to the hottest man or the ugliest woman on earth? Can I do both at the same time? Like a sandwich? Like hottest man taps my ass while I have sex with the ugliest woman? That'd be pretty cool. Like a menage a trois. The problem is, I am the hottest man on earth, so I make love to myself every time I masturbate. And I'm probably also the ugliest woman on earth, so both those people are me. Doesn't really make much sense. What do you think about spirits, like ghosts? Lots of information has been documented, including people actually seeing ghosts. As you do not believe in any god, do you believe in the supernatural? No. I don't believe in ghosts. And here's just a few. I have some more compelling reasons why that have to do with science and psychology, but I'm just going to give you my common sense reasons for not believing in ghosts. Every time someone sees a ghost, it's always wearing clothes. That doesn't make any sense. Did the clothes die along with the person? You never see a naked ghost unless the person is purported to have died naked. If someone died in the shower, then their ghost is naked. But if they die wearing their clothes, then they are a clothed ghost. How does that work, first of all? Second of all, if they can walk through walls, why don't they fall through floors? Third of all, why aren't they more plentiful? You think you'd see them everywhere, but you only see them in a few specific locations, usually really spooky abandoned houses. Why is that? Or old Civil War battle sites where a lot of people died. It doesn't seem to make much sense. If not everyone becomes a ghost, then what happens to the rest of people? Do they cross over, as John Edwards says, to some other side? If so, then how can you avoid crossing over? Doesn't it seem like a lot more people would just stay if they had a choice between going to the other side and staying here? Doesn't it seem like a lot of people would stay? Also, what if someone's a cripple? Do they get a ghost wheelchair? Or do they just have to kind of drag themselves along in the afterlife? These are the questions that we should be asking ourselves before we even consider ghosts as a possibility. But, here, I'll bring a little bit of science into it. I remember a particular experiment where, they sent people into a place, this abandoned movie theater, and they told one group of people, you're here looking for ways that we can renovate this theater and get it working again. And they told another group of people, you're here looking for ghosts because this place has a long history of being haunted. And sure enough, the people who were looking for ghosts felt that the place was super haunted, and they all saw ghosts and heard ghosts, and all kinds of weird stuff happened to them. And the group of people who went there to look, with the idea that they were looking for ways to renovate the theater, none of them saw any ghosts. None of them experienced anything strange or unnatural. So, a lot of this stuff is just in your head. Let's see what else we got. If you were president, how would you eliminate radical Muslim terrorists or terrorists in general? Well, first of all, how do you define terrorist? Because if you're going to define terrorist as a person who uses violence in order to gain something that they want politically or socially, then you could call the U.S. government terrorists, and you would have to call our founding fathers terrorists. Our soldiers in Iraq would have to be terrorists. So what is a terrorist? Let's say that you only define terrorists narrowly as these people who oppose our government, people who oppose our status quo. How do you stop that from happening? You don't. You can't. There's not going to be a point where you kill the last terrorist and everyone loves us. It just doesn't work that way. There are always going to be people with severe ideological differences. And as long as there are ideological differences, there will be violence. And as long as there's violence, there will be terrorism. In your Transformers 2 review, you referred to God and Satan. As an atheist, why do you bring supernatural figures into your speech and such if you don't believe in them? I also talked in the Transformers review about Transformers. I don't believe in them either. The other day my girlfriend said to me she was complaining about her boss, and she was saying how unreasonable he was, and I brought up a Star Trek thing. I said, well, that reminds me of this episode of Star Trek. And she started laughing at me because it was so nerdy, like, oh, you're bringing up Star Trek, that's cute and nerdy. But I was bringing up Star Trek. I don't believe in Star Trek either. I make constant references to fictional things. I just told you earlier how Unforgiven and Seven Samurai had informed my development as a human being. Fiction has a profound effect on us. You look at the works of, I think it's Joseph Campbell. I'm not sure if I'm getting that name right, but he wrote, he did the interview with Bill Moyers. It was the special, The Power of Myth. I've read part of the book, and I'm gonna get around to watching the whole series. I've heard bits and pieces of it, but it's about how mythology informs our lives, and the importance of myth in really teaching people how to adapt to culture and how to behave. It's really our true moral guidelines. I mean, that's why the Bible is not filled with just explicit rules. It doesn't just say this is wrong and this is wrong and this is wrong. It provides stories, stories that get passed down. That is, to inform people of what the morality that it's espousing. And even today, modern authors, they inject their moral lessons into the books. I mean, a lot of times that frustrates me. Like, I think Dean Koontz is a conservative douchebag, but I read his books, and I get the conservative douchebag point of view, and I'm like, okay, this guy's a conservative douchebag, but I still like the stories. And when it comes to God and Satan, that's two icons that everyone in this culture can understand, because that's the most prominent mythology of our culture. When I say the devil, people understand that I'm using the devil as a literary embodiment of evil. And when I say God, I'm talking about a literary embodiment of the force of creation. So that's why I bring those up. I don't bring them up because I believe figuratively, a man, a white flowing beard sitting on a throne controlling everything, or because I believe that there is a devil with a twisty mustache and big red horns and a pitchfork poking sinners' asses for all eternity. I don't actually have to believe in those things to find them useful as symbols. Don't be so literal-minded. What do you think of Marilyn Manson's newest album, The High End of Low? Does it contain new favorites for you? I like the song Devour. I like the song Leave a Scar. I like Blank and White. I Have to Look Up Just to See Hell. I think it's a really good album. I also like Into the Fire. I like all of his tracks, really, but those are my favorites. I think it's a really good album, and I look forward to his next one. What do you think of Pat Condell, and in particular his views on the burqa being banned? I have people in my life who support or partially support Pat Condell on that, and who point out that it's not just about a piece of clothing, it's about a tool of repression or suppression. I always get those two confused. But at the same time, when you talk about banning anything, I cannot stand for that. I don't want things banned. I want people to change their minds. If we're going to get rid of the burqa, it has to be because we change people's minds and they make a different choice. I don't think you can pass a law and say, oh, we're going to mandate what we believe to be right. That doesn't make sense to me. People have to be free to behave how they're going to behave. I've always held by that. Even when I morally disagree with something, I believe that people have to have the freedom to fuck up. Because if you don't give them that freedom, then they're never going to learn. They're always just going to be bitter, and no matter what law you pass, they're going to either break it, or they're going to abide by it so begrudgingly that they're going to harbor a huge resentment towards you forever. And neither of those is healthy. If you want to really change the world, then you have to change people's minds. That's how you change the world. Unfortunately, people are too stubborn, and most of them won't ever change their minds. But the fact that we don't burn people for being witches anymore, the fact that we don't persecute homosexuals quite as much as we used to, the fact that we can elect a black man president shows that people's minds can change. You just have to do it slowly over the course of time. And I know that a lot of us really want to see big sweeping changes right here and now, but that's just not how it works. So I don't agree with Pat Condell on that. Who is sexier, Gandalf or Dumbledore? Well, it's funny because Dumbledore, as you know, is gay. J.K. Rowling has said that Dumbledore is gay, which is great. But I wish he would have been gay in the books, not just her telling us afterwards. I'd like to see him actually do some gay stuff in the book, like, grab Harry's ass, and like, oh, sorry, I thought you were into that, And, of course, Ian McKellen, who played Gandalf, is gay as an actor. The actual actor is gay. I'm not sure what Michael Gambon's sexuality is, or Gambon, whatever the fuck his name is. But, they're both gay, so that's both hot. You got a gay dude with a big, long, white, flowing beard. That's always good. So I make that one a tie. How did your dog Hercules die? Well, Hercules started having seizures. He started having seizures a long time ago, but on the particular night, he just had seizure after seizure after seizure after seizure after seizure until eventually there was no space between them. He was just having a constant rolling seizure that would not stop. We took him to the vet. They tried to treat him with steroids and some other stuff, and none of it was working, so we had to put him down at that point. So that's how that happened. My question is, what the hell were you holding in your hand during that blueberry pie / new Rickroll vagary? It looked like a poorly painted head of some kind of plastic doll or something. It was actually a stone cherub's head. My mom had these two little cherubs that, it was a statue of two cherubs with their arms around each other, just kind of like smiling and happy like cherubs are, and they were butt naked, so I used to always like grab their asses and stuff and molest the two little cherubs for the amusement of my friends at the time. Anyway, one day my stepdad got pissed about something. He was like on crystal meth at the time, and he's like, "Fuck you, bitch!" and he threw it across the room, and it broke, a bunch of pieces, and the two heads kind of fell off perfectly, and I painted both of them. I don't know what happened to the other one, but I still have one of them. It's somewhere around here, and that's what you see in the blueberry pie video. It's a painted cherub's head. Poorly painted, yeah, but I actually didn't paint it. I scribbled on it with a marker. And I had some pens that actually had like some kind of glossy paint stuff in them, and I was using those as well. The final question is, even though you're an atheist, do you still respect theists and not look down on them for believing in a higher power? When someone tells me that they believe in something without evidence, it's hard for that not to diminish my respect for them in some way or another. If they at least tell me that they, if someone says to me, like, I'm not sure, I know that that's code for, I probably don't really believe that, but so many other people do that, well, I'm just really not sure. I don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to make an issue of it. That's fine. I kind of understand that. Some people just don't view it as that important of a battle, and I can comprehend that. I'm not averse to that line of reasoning. But when someone tells me that they flat out believe in God, despite the fact that they can produce no evidence whatsoever, and all of their arguments are just weak stuff, like the argument from creation and the watchmaker argument, and a bunch of and then they give you all this a priori nonsense. I can't respect that person. I can respect them maybe on some other level, but in terms of my perception of their intelligence, that's always going to be tainted by that. And I understand that there is usually a modicum of brainwashing, if not a lot of brainwashing at work there, and I can also respect that. Not in the way of respect as in granting, but you know what I'm saying. Anyway, but yeah, it does become more difficult for me to respect someone like that, at least in terms of their intelligence. But that's all the questions that I felt were fit to answer. The rest of you did a bad job asking questions. So, do better next time. Actually, don't, because if I get too many more questions, I'm going to have to, like, talk for 7 hours straight. So, most of you just keep asking your terrible questions that I'll never answer. Amazing Atheist, peace the fuck out. I'm just going to say fuck because YouTube isn't even watching at this point anyway. And I said it a few times in the video, so whatever. Well, get the fuck out of here.